Hi there Star Wars collectors, welcome to another Bossk's Bounty video and welcome back to Ask Bossk's Bounty. This is episode 4. So I've got plenty of questions to answer from last week's episode, but if you do want your question answered in next week's episode, be sure to leave your question in the comments section below and I will do my best to answer it next week. And if you happen to like this series and like my channel in general, do be sure to drop a like down below. That really does help the channel, really does help the video. Let's get this out there, so thank you very much for that. And of course, if you're new to the channel, subscribe if you're new and leave your question in the comment section below. All right then, so on to the first one, and that is from ODST Animations 224. He says, great video, and question, should they bring back mail-away figures or should they bring back comic packs? So thank you very much for the nice comment, and yes indeed, I do think they should bring back mail-aways and I do think they should bring back comic packs. As you can see there, I do have the original vintage mail-away figure for the Emperor. I love that sort of thing. I wish Hasbro would do more of that. And of course, when it comes to comic packs, if they could do things like this, if I can just get that into shot, then I'd be over the moon. So this was the comic pack that came with a Clone Trooper and Clone Commander from Kashyyyk. Two awesome looking figures. This one here is actually quite rare, exclusive to this pack. I think they might both be exclusive, but I'm pretty sure you can get a figure that's similar to this in like the 30th anniversary or something like that. But this guy here, the Clone Commander, he is exclusive to this comic pack and is therefore pretty rare. So, yep, Hasbro, please. I would love more comic packs. I do like these, so I hope that answers your question. And moving on to the next question from Bill Polk. He says, did you ever pick up any cool mail-away figures or items by sending in proofs of purchases? I remember when my buddy gave me an extra Boba Fett, he picked up from the mail-in promo back in the 80s. So yes, you know, just from the question that I just answered just there, I do have the Emperor. I did buy him recently, so he wasn't one from my childhood or anything. He is in his baggie there, all sealed and everything. But I do remember sending off for Dengar. And the funny thing about that was that it took so long to arrive that eventually when it did, I completely forgot that I'd even ordered it. And when it did arrive, I'd kind of sort of grown out of Star Wars a bit. So it's like, great, I've got this Dengar figure. Thanks very much. But quite useless to me now. Corey Doe says, great video as always. Thank you very much, mate. What are your thoughts on the 5 POA movie line that they were doing for the past films has now been cancelled? So I made a whole video about this called like the death of 3.75 inch 5 POA or something like that. And basically, me personally, I was not too bothered about it. I mean, at the end of the day, if it means that they're going to make more figures in the vintage collection, then I'm all for it. If the figures don't come out in the vintage collection, then obviously it's a bad thing as well, because we were getting some pretty good figures in that 5 POA line for Solo especially. So it is a little bit disappointing, but as I say, if it allows Hasbro to concentrate more on the vintage collection and give us more of these fantastic card backs, fantastic figures, then I'm all for it. Nathan Rosario says, if you could pick one character who has never had an action figure in any Star Wars toy line to be made, who would it be? So this is quite an easy one for me. That figure or character would be General Antok Merrick from Rogue One. So this guy has never had an action figure. He needs to be made. He needs to be on a vintage style card, preferably with this image that I'm going to throw up on the screen for you now. I think that'll make an absolutely awesome card back for him. And I just think it is like a kind of a missed opportunity with that figure and character. At the end of the day, Rogue One, he was the sort of shining light in the Rebel fleet, if you like, the main pilot, and we never got him in any type of figure. So come on, Hasbro, if you're watching, which you're not, I and everyone else I do believe would like that figure indeed. Next up, we have Ivan Montalvo. Hello, Tim. Great channel. So thank you very much for that. Question, which is your favourite vintage collection vehicle and playset of all? Also, which have been your 2 favourite Hasbro Star Wars toy lines? So this vehicle in front of me here, the Imperial tank, is possibly my favourite vintage collection vehicle that I do own. There are a couple that I don't own that I would like to own, specifically the Slave One. I think the vintage collection version of the Slave One is pretty much perfect. It's actually a lot bigger than you would expect. So that's definitely the one that I would like. But in terms of the favourite one that I have, I think you can't go too far wrong with the Imperial tank. The detail's amazing. You know, one of these opens with all the little canisters that comes out. And obviously when you've got the driver and the commander to go with it and the Rogue One Stormtrooper, you can get that whole diorama. And yeah, so that's my favourite vintage collection vehicle. In terms of my 2 favourite toy lines by Hasbro, I would have to say obviously the vintage collection. That's my ultimate favourite, purely because it resembles the original vintage figures from back when I was a child. But I would have to say, if I was going to pick another one, then possibly the Black Series. I do like the Black Series figures. I don't go out of my way to collect them all, but there are some exceptional figures like the Gamorrean Guard that I absolutely love, and I make sure I have in my collection. And possibly maybe even the Legacy collection. There were some awesome figures in the Legacy collection. I mean, I have this one here. I quite like this card back. So these were pretty good. I've got a few of these, and there's also the Builder droid there, so you could collect them all and build that figure there. So that sort of thing's pretty good. I wish Hasbro again would do that kind of thing, maybe, especially with the lack of the 5POA line. I think they could easily release something similar to this. David Sutherland says, I love this series. Great questions being asked and answered, so thank you very much. He says favourite card backs. So it's a difficult one, this one, because there is lots and lots of card backs from the original vintage line and from the vintage collection. So if I was going to pick one, it's probably going to be this one here, the Stormtrooper. I just think it's so iconic. I remember them being on the pegs as a child, and the Stormtroopers, that is Star Wars, isn't it? If you think about Star Wars, you kind of think about the Stormtroopers, at least I do anyway. And I love that card back where they're both there in the action shot from the film. If I was going to pick another one, then I'd probably pick the Return of the Jedi Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight. So that particular one means quite a lot to me, because it was the first figure that I actually remember sort of buying myself in the shop. And it was actually on the way back from seeing Return of the Jedi with my brother. And I remember picking it up in the shop and thinking it was an amazing figure. And that card back image that they've used in Jabba's Palace is just awesome. In fact, it's the variant card back that I don't actually own in the vintage collection for the Endor Capture Luke. So if anyone does have that one spare hanging around and you want to hook me up, then you know where to find me. Super Giancarlo Brothers says, what's your favourite Stormtrooper variant? So I presume you mean by that the sort of variants of the Stormtroopers, like the Snow Trooper, the Sand Trooper and all that kind of thing, rather than some funny minor variant. So I'm going to take it that that is what you mean. Now, it's very, very difficult because I've got three that I absolutely love, and they are the three from the original trilogy. So you've got the Stormtrooper, you've got the Imperial Snow Trooper, and then, of course, this one, which I just showed you there, the Biker Scout. When I saw this guy flying around on those speeder bikes in Return of the Jedi when I was, 7 years old, they just looked absolutely awesome. But then if you were to say, does this one look better than the Stormtrooper? Especially when you've got figures like this guy hanging around, I think you've got to say the original's the best one. As much as I love the Snow Troopers and I love the Scout Troopers, I think the Stormtrooper wins it. The Worst says, my next question is, what are your top 5 favourite droids throughout the Star Wars universe? Okay, that's quite easy for me. So you've obviously got R2 units, so R2-D2. These three in here I do love. So I love the R5 units with the sort of more square head. Always love those guys. I love the Death Star droid, especially the original vintage one. And of course the Power droid or the Gonk droid. This one's okay. I much prefer the vintage one, the little blue one. That's a fantastic figure with the little clicky legs and everything. Now I know that's only 4. If I could pick another one, I'd go C-3PO Protocol droid. 1980s and Star Wars guy says, great vid, mate. Thank you very much. What is your favourite Imperial vehicle and which one do you want remade for it to be in the vintage collection? Okay, so there's quite a few that I like from the Imperial. I like Darth Vader's TIE Fighter. I like the TIE Interceptors. But if I was going to pick one that I really, really like, it's probably the Imperial Shuttle. The vintage one back in the day was an absolutely awesome toy. Such a great vehicle. Absolutely massive as well. And I think they re-released it in the Saga line. So I just bung up a picture of that there. So that's the Saga one. Again, something I don't own, but I'd love to own. But if I was going to own it, I think Hasbro, redo it, get it out into that vintage collection in a vintage collection box. And I think it'd sell like hotcakes. So yeah, that one's probably my favourite. Dan Connolly says, if you happen to end up on a beach island with a TV and a choice of only one Star Wars movie, what would it be? I'd probably have to go with the Return of the Jedi, purely because that's the sort of go-to film for me that I can just whack on, watch all the way through and then really, really enjoy. I know The Empire Strikes Back probably is the best Star Wars film. Return of the Jedi, you've got the Jabba's Palace, you've got the whole sail barge bit, you've got the bit at the end with Vader and the big battle above Endor, you've got the speeder bikes. There's so much in that film that I just love. And as I say, it was the first Star Wars film that I ever saw in the cinema. So if I was in a desert island, that's the film I would choose. Palpatine 1975 says, hi buddy, I'm enjoying the Ask Bossk segments, thank you. Do you think Hasbro will re-release a new vehicle stroke ship for the Empire Strikes Back 40th anniversary? And what do you strongly feel Hasbro will actually release? 40th anniversary, I think they'll do something for the 40th anniversary. Whether it'll be a vehicle or a playset is anyone's guess. I'd like to think that they would do a playset in the mould of the Jabba's Palace that they brought out this year. So if they could do something like that for the Empire Strikes Back, that'd be awesome. So maybe just off the cuff, maybe the carbon freezing chamber or something like that. I think they did one of those for the Power of the Force 2 line in the green and black box. So if they could do something like that in the Vintage Collection, that'd be absolutely awesome. Maybe come with a couple of figures, maybe an Ugnaught or something. That'd be brilliant. Alien Beam says, love your vids. Thank you very much. Question, would you buy a 6-inch Jar Jar? No, probably not. 6-inch figures, again, I've said before, I pick and choose with those ones. I don't get them all. I get the ones that I think are actually exceptional figures. And yeah, Jar Jar isn't the sort of figure that I would have on display in my 6-inch line. So no. Jenkins Jara says, another great video, man. So thank you very much. What do you think? Would it be cool if they re-release vintage small rigs, especially the desert sail skiff of Boba Fett? So yes, absolutely. I would love them, Hasbro, to do that. I loved the mini rigs when I was a kid. I remember specifically the tripod cannon was a great one. So anything like that, I'm all for. Anything that they can create that was once a vintage item, bring it back in the Vintage Collection, spruce it up a little bit, give it a bit more weathering, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, mini rigs, 100%. I'd love them to do that. Okay then, guys, that's it for this week. Thank you very much for your questions. I hope you've enjoyed the answers. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to drop your questions in the comment section below for next week. Don't forget to hit that like button as well and subscribe if you're new to the channel, and we shall see you on the next one.